The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Reporters kept the politicians straight.
Exactly. And for the last 30 to 40 years, and I think, frankly, Watergate fueled the flames of this, the liberal media began to believe that they were an establishment unto themselves, that they could make or break presidents, that they could set the agenda, that they could drive this country towards a left-wing socialist direction. And you've been seeing this now growing decade by decade by decade. They're now getting so naked, so obvious, it's almost not even an issue anymore because the American people know that the game is rigged.
Jeff, I believe this story, the true story that ever comes out about Barry Soetoro, alias Barack Obama, I believe the scandal is so big that most people can't even comprehend what's taking place. I believe if we ever hear the truth, we will discover that this guy is a plant, that he was put here, he was groomed, he was brought here by certain powers, he was put into college, everything was paid for him, every door was open for him, and this is the culmination of a plan that has been underway for decades. I believe that is the big scandal. And if that door, if the lid is ever open to that can of snakes, man, I'll tell you what, you have no idea how far it's going to go, because there will be so many people implicated in this conspiracy.
Well, I mean, look, Rick, what I found stunning, and this goes back a couple years, the media refuses to look into his associations with Jeremiah Wright. They refuse to look into his connections to Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn, to his ties to the Weather Underground. Now, people think, well, Jeff, okay, weren't these crazy radicals who planted a few bombs here and there? Yes, but they did a lot more than that. They deliberately planned to overthrow the American government, to have the Soviet Union, China, and Cuba, I couldn't even make this up if I wanted to, invade and annex parts of the United States. That was their goal. And to send 25 million Americans into, quote, re-education camps in the southwest of the United States. And if they weren't re-educated into Marxism and socialism and decide that they still liked American capitalism and individualism, they were to be, quote, annihilated. Now, this is what Bill Ayers championed. This is what Bernardine Dorn championed. This is what the Weather Underground was all about.
And these are the friends of the President of the United States.
Going back decades, where he started his political career with these people. And no one's going to look into this? Now, I turned this around in my column, and I said, just stand back for a second, Rick. I said, what if the shoe was reversed? What if this was George W. Bush in office? Just stand back for a second. And there were doubts about his birth certificate. And there were doubts about whether he was born where he said he was born and whether he was a natural-born citizen. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, there is a sheriff, a high-profile, prominent sheriff, tremendously respected in the law enforcement community, who comes out with a report backed by private investigators, says, I'm telling you, we believe that this birth certificate that he's presented at a major press conference in front of the world and in front of the American media and the American people is a complete fraud and forgery. They would go after Bush. It would be open season on this guy. And when he was in office, just look at the double standard. They looked at his college records. They looked at his drinking and partying habits when he was a young man as a student. They looked at his marriage. They looked at his partying habits of his daughters. They looked at his National Guard service. They looked at his record as governor. They called him a war criminal. They asked for him to be impeached. They went after him. They called him a liar. They said he was in bed with Halliburton. In other words, they went over this guy with a fine-tooth comb. There was nothing in his background that was off limits to them. But when it comes to Obama, his health records remain sealed. His undergraduate transcripts, sealed. His education records, sealed. His time in Pakistan, which we know in the 1980s, when Americans were not allowed to travel and visit Pakistan. We don't even look into this. How did he get a visa? Under what visa? Under what passport did he travel? His years in Indonesia. This man spent, by his own admission, 4 years in Indonesia. Again, by his own admission. He attended a Muslim madrasa, a Muslim school. He learned the Quran. He recited the Quran. His father, his first father, was a Muslim. His second father, who adopted him, was also a Muslim. He admits that he was raised as a Muslim. Nobody looks into this. I mean, this to me, we know almost nothing about this man's past. It is shrouded in mystery. So where are the reporters? Where is the media?
Hey, Jeff, where are the Republicans?
Well, I mean, Rick, they've been asleep at the wheel now for a very, very long time.
They're in control of the House of Representatives.
They're cowards. Rick, they won't even forget going into Obama's background, forget raising the issue of the birth certificate, forget raising the issue of the fact that he has a cultural Muslim past, his ties to radical communists, his ties to Father Flager, his ties to Derek Bell. I mean, I could just go, his ties to Saul Alinsky. They won't even touch any of that.
Jeff, Rick, I talked privately on the phone with a U.S. congressman, Republican, very well known. I told him about the interviews that we have done over the years with private investigators, you know, the whole list of people that could be expert witnesses in a criminal trial. I said, I'll supply you anything you want if you will get something done with this. And he told me flat out, he said, Rick, Speaker Boehner will not allow us to even mention Obama's past. He said it's off limits.
Oh, it's an open secret. Look, Boehner is a coward. Boehner is interested in John Boehner. Boehner is like many Republicans. Rick, look, you're down in Florida. You're in the heartland. You're talking to real Americans. You're talking to middle America. You're a patriot. In Washington, it's very hard to explain this to people because it's a different world. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the modern-day Rome of the Roman Empire. They live in a bubble. They live to have a profile piece written about them in the Washington Post. They live to have the National Press Corps fawning all over them. They have lobbyists coming in through their door. It's all about respectability. It's all about how you're perceived. It's all about climbing the greasy pole. It's all about power. It's all about focus groups. I mean, just look at him. I mean, I don't want to mock the guy, but honestly, look at him. I mean, he spends hours a day. Who does that in a tanning salon? His skin is orange. I mean, it's not even brown. He's almost invented a new ethnicity. There's white, brown, black, and now there's orange. It's John Boehner. I mean, it's just you just look at this guy. You know, he's a gutless, spineless politician. That's all he is. They won't even cut $1 in spending. Never mind, Rick. Honestly, never mind going after Obama. Look, Rick, just stand back.
He likes to play golf with Obama.
He plays golf with Obama. He likes to suntan with Obama. He likes to eat crab cakes with Obama. He's buddies with Obama. Look, John Boehner is just interested in John Boehner. That's all John Boehner has been interested in. I never liked him. I never wanted him to be Speaker of the House. I think this guy's been a disaster. I think he should be replaced after the 2012 election. But, I mean, Rick, you and I are talking about serious, profound, legal, moral, constitutional issues.
Well, maybe Mitt Romney will make this a campaign issue.
I don't believe he will. I believe that Romney will focus. He will focus on the economy. He won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. But, I mean, Rick, what I'm stunned at is this. And it's not that I'm trying to distract from the issue at hand, but we are now staring at a $16 trillion national debt. Or we're not talking about natural-born citizen. We're not talking about having the guts to look into a man's past. I'm not asking people to do some serious, hardcore investigative reporting. We're talking now, we know this, we're at $16 trillion. We have $1.2 trillion deficits under this president for 4 consecutive years. By his own numbers, in his own in his own White House budget office, they now say by 2016, 2017, America will be on the verge of bankruptcy. We are going the way of Greece. You look at Greece, society has collapsed. Pensions aren't being paid. People aren't collecting their unemployment checks. Taxes are going through the roof. Businesses are going bankrupt. People are getting laid off by the thousands. There is anarchy on the streets. People are descending upon Parliament. Government buildings are being burned to the ground. You have anarchists and communists and socialists battling nationalists and right-wing conservatives. This is the future of America if we don't get our fiscal house in order. And the Republican Party, the conservative movement, for all intents and purposes, can't even find money to cut in the budget to save our country. Never mind say, excuse me, Mr. President, I got a sheriff down there in Arizona who your civil rights department has been harassing now because you don't like the fact that he's trying to enforce our immigration laws, who conducted an independent investigation, who's putting his entire career, his entire reputation on the line, and he says, you know what? You're a fraud. Your birth certificate's a fraud. Your entire narrative is a fraud. Your citizenship is most likely a fraud. You don't even belong to be in the White House. Now, I mean, so this is the state of modern-day America.
Yes,
and
it is.
if you mention any of this, Rick, literally in Washington, D.C., they think you're crazy, you're a kook, you're a fringe guy. I'm one of the few people that actually writes about this. Because, frankly, I don't want to be at these liberal cocktail parties, Rick. I got better things to do with my life.
And I can't imagine you get too many invitations these days. Jeff Kuhner, he's a columnist for the Washington Times, and he is outspoken, and there are very few of them left in this country that are in the media. Jeff, appreciate you being on True News today.
My pleasure, Rick. Take care, buddy.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.